Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Tonight, we're diving into one of the strangest and most terrifying paranormal cases to ever shake Victorian England, a haunting that gripped the nation back in 1871. Imagine this: you're walking home through a foggy London street, gas lamps flickering, silence all around. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a figure draped in white appears. You freeze. It doesn't walk like a man. It doesn't breathe like a man. And when you finally muster the courage to touch it, your hand goes straight through its body. This wasn't just a creepy campfire tale. In 1871, hundreds of witnesses across England reported being terrorized by ghostly figures. Some accounts were brushed off as criminal tricksters dressing up to scare victims. But others? Well, they defied explanation. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of this forgotten ghost panic, a chilling story of phantoms, fear, and Victorian mystery. To understand this case, we need to step into the mindset of 1871 Britain. This was the heart of the Victorian era. Science and industry were booming, trains were racing across the countryside, factories were churning, and Charles Darwin's theories were challenging old beliefs. But while technology surged forward, society was still deeply rooted in superstition and religion. Spiritualism was on the rise. Seances were fashionable, mediums claimed they could speak to the dead, and people flocked to darkened parlors hoping to hear the voices of loved ones from beyond. Ghost stories filled the pages of newspapers and penny dreadfuls. Authors like Charles Dickens and Sheridan Le Fanu were weaving chilling tales that blurred the line between fiction and reality. And with so much death around them, cholera, tuberculosis, child mortality, the Victorians lived side by side with grief. Talking to spirits wasn't entertainment. For many, it was comfort. So when reports of a real ghost spread through the streets of London in 1871, people weren't just curious. They were terrified. Because in their world, ghosts weren't make-believe. They were possible. Section 2. The hauntings begin. The first wave of reports in 1871 came from churchyards and alleyways in London. One of the most notorious spots, St. John's Churchyard. Witnesses swore a spectral figure in a white shroud would rise from behind tombstones at night. Some claimed the entity chased them. Others said it simply appeared, motionless, its hollow eyes glowing in the dark. A few chilling accounts even described the ghost as grabbing women, cold, bony fingers wrapping around their arms, before vanishing without a trace. Now, skeptics at the time argued these were nothing more than ghost impersonators, criminals who dressed as spirits to mug unsuspecting victims. And yes, there are confirmed cases of this happening. In fact, the Victorian press loved to report on so-called ghostly villains. But here's the catch. Multiple victims described their hands passing through the figure. Others saw the entity literally walk through walls or vanish into the earth. And in at least 2 cases, the ghost appeared in multiple locations at the same time, witnessed by different groups. How do you explain that? And here's something even stranger. The sightings weren't limited to London. That same year, smaller towns across England reported similar encounters. Tall figures cloaked in white, drifting silently through graveyards, fields, and country lanes. Almost as if something, or someone, was traveling across the nation. One particular story from 1871 still stands out. A man named Thomas Briggs, a clerk living in London, was making his way home late at night. It was past midnight, the streets deserted. As he passed the gates of a churchyard, he noticed movement. He described seeing a figure, taller than any man I'd ever known, draped in what looked like a burial shroud. It was deathly pale, with black hollows where the eyes should have been. Briggs froze. The figure turned toward him, but instead of walking, it glided silently across the cobblestones. Briggs panicked and swung his walking stick straight through it. And here's the chilling detail. He swore his cane met no resistance. The figure simply passed through the stick, then melted into the shadows of the church wall. Briggs later told his colleagues that the encounter left him sick with fear for weeks. He refused to walk home alone at night ever again. Now, skeptics suggested he had been overtired or drunk. But Briggs was known as a serious, respectable man. His account was published in a local newspaper, where it stirred up even more hysteria. Section 4. Criminals or something else? So what was really happening in 1871? Were these phantoms, or just human tricksters? Victorian London had its fair share of crime. Ghost impersonators were a real phenomenon. Criminals would cover themselves in sheets or paint themselves with phosphorus to glow in the dark. It was an easy way to terrify victims before robbing them. But the reports from 1871 don't all fit that explanation. Consistency of details. Witnesses who never met each other described the same tall, shrouded figure. Physical impossibilities, passing through walls, vanishing instantly, glowing with unnatural light. Widespread locations. Unless criminals were coordinating across the country, how do you explain near-identical reports hundreds of miles apart? Some historians suggest a mass hysteria effect. Once newspapers published ghost stories, people started seeing what they expected to see. Every shadow became a spirit. Every trick of the fog became a phantom. But others argue there's more to it. Paranormal researchers today compare the 1871 accounts to modern sightings of shadow people or residual hauntings, apparitions that appear and reappear without interacting directly, like an echo in time. Could these 1871 phantoms have been a wave of genuine paranormal activity? By late 1871, the ghost panic had spread so far that even Parliament debated it. Newspapers mocked the stories, calling them old wives' tales. But the public wasn't laughing. People were afraid to walk alone at night. Some communities organized patrols to catch these so-called ghosts. Interestingly, after 1871, the wave of sightings suddenly stopped. Almost as if the entity, or entities, had moved on. But here's where it gets even stranger. Decades later, in the early 1900s, there were new reports of phantoms in the exact same churchyards. Figures in white, drifting silently among the graves. Different generation, same story. Coincidence? Or the return of something ancient, something that never really left? Looking back, the 1871 ghost panic tells us a lot about how fear spreads. Was it paranormal? Or was it psychological? Maybe both. Think about it. If even half of the sightings were genuine, that's one of the largest ghost outbreaks in British history. If none were real, then it's a fascinating example of mass hysteria, proving how easily the human mind can conjure terrors when primed by culture, fear, and the unknown. And here's a chilling thought. What if these sightings were a warning? A glimpse of something we weren't meant to see? So, what do you think? Were the 1871 phantoms just criminals in disguise, taking advantage of superstition? Was it mass hysteria fueled by ghost stories in the papers? Or were hundreds of Victorians actually encountering something from the other side? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you've ever had your own encounter with a ghostly figure,